The rain hammered against the windshield as Naomi's trembling hands gripped the steering wheel. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the towering mansion that loomed ahead like a fortress of steel and glass. She pulled up to the gates, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it over the thunder. This was it, the moment she'd been planning for 6 months, the moment that would either give her answers or destroy her completely. She stepped out into the storm, her suitcase heavy in her hand, her clothes soaking through in seconds. The intercom buzzed, a voice deep and controlled spoke through the static. Yes? Naomi's breath caught. I'm here for the nanny position. Naomi Ross? There was a pause, then the gates creaked open. As she walked up the long driveway, every step felt like a betrayal of her mother, of herself, of the truth she was searching for. But she kept moving forward because turning back now would mean her mother's pain had been for nothing. The mansion grew larger with each step, its windows like dark eyes watching her approach. She thought of her mother's face in those final days, the way she'd whispered Elena's name even as the life drained from her body, the way she'd clutched those returned letters, unopened, unread, unwanted. The front door opened before she could knock. And there he stood. Victor Hale, billionaire, tech mogul. The man whose wife had destroyed her mother's life, or so she believed. He was tall, sharp-featured, with steel gray eyes that looked right through her. His suit was immaculate, his posture rigid. He looked like a man who had forgotten how to feel. There were lines around his eyes, evidence of sleepless nights and buried grief. His jaw was set tight, his expression carefully neutral. "You're late," he said flatly. "The storm," Naomi replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm sorry, the roads were flooded near the bridge." Victor stepped aside without a word, letting her in. The mansion was massive, cold, and eerily silent. Marble floors stretched endlessly. Modern art hung on walls that felt more like a museum than a home. A massive crystal chandelier hung overhead, its light cold and clinical. Everything was perfect, and yet nothing felt alive. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, as if the house had been mourning for so long it had forgotten any other state of being. "Follow me," Victor said, leading her down a hallway lined with photographs. Naomi's eyes caught one in particular. A woman with golden hair and a radiant smile, wearing a white sundress, laughing at whoever was behind the camera. Elena Hale, the woman who had once been everything to Naomi's mother. She was beautiful, achingly so, with the kind of warmth that radiated even through a photograph. Her chest tightened. She'd seen this face before, in the faded photos her mother had kept hidden in a shoebox under her bed. "That's my late wife," Victor said without turning around. "She passed 2 years ago. Cancer. It was fast." "I'm sorry for your loss," Naomi whispered, and she meant it. Even through the anger, the confusion, the grief, she meant it. Because whatever Elena had done, whatever pain she'd caused, she'd clearly been loved. And losing that kind of love left scars. They reached a sitting room where a small girl sat curled up on a velvet couch, clutching a stuffed rabbit. She had dark curls and eyes that seemed too old for her age. She didn't look up when they entered. Her fingers traced the rabbit's worn ears over and over, a repetitive motion that spoke of anxiety, of a need for comfort that hadn't been met. "This is Clara," Victor said, his voice softening just slightly. "My daughter. She's 7. She hasn't spoken much since her mother died. The last 3 nannies couldn't handle her silence. They all quit within weeks. One of them said she was unsettling." Naomi felt a flash of anger at that. A child, grieving, and they'd called her unsettling. She knelt down slowly, meeting Clara at eye level. She didn't say anything at first. She just smiled. A soft, genuine smile. The kind her mother used to give her when she was scared. And then something miraculous happened. Clara looked up. Her dark eyes met Naomi's, and she smiled back. It was small, tentative, like a flower opening after a long winter. But it was real. Victor froze. His breath hitched audibly. It was the first time in months, maybe longer, that he'd seen his daughter smile. His hand came up to his mouth, and for a moment, Naomi thought he might cry. "Clara?" he whispered, his voice breaking just slightly. "Sweetheart?" The little girl didn't speak, but she reached out and touched Naomi's hand. Her fingers were small and cold. Victor stared at them, stunned into complete silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You're hired. When can you start?" "Tonight," Naomi replied, her own voice thick with unexpected feeling. This wasn't part of the plan. She wasn't supposed to feel anything for these people. But Clara's small hand in hers, the desperate hope in Victor's eyes, it was all too real. Good, Victor said. Mrs. Chen Shen will show you to your room. It's on the second floor near Clara's. We'll discuss details in the morning. Before we continue with this incredible story, if you're already hooked, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Trust me, what happens next will blow your mind. Now let's dive deeper. The first few days at the Hale mansion were strange. The house was beautiful but lifeless, like a place where time had stopped. Clara moved through the rooms like a ghost, and Victor was always working, locked away in his office, barely present even when he was home. Naomi would hear him sometimes, late at night, pacing in his study. The floorboards would creak above her room, back and forth until the early hours of morning. But Naomi was patient. She didn't push Clara to talk. Instead, she sat with her, read to her, drew pictures with her. She learned that Clara liked purple best, that she was afraid of the dark but pretended not to be, that she slept with 3 stuffed animals, but the rabbit was her favorite because her mother had given it to her on her 5th birthday. They spent hours in Clara's playroom, a bright space that seemed out of place in the otherwise sterile mansion. It had been Elena's doing. Victor told her one evening she'd insisted on color, on life, on making sure Clara had a space that felt like childhood. She was a good mother, Victor said quietly, standing in the doorway watching them paint. Whatever else she was, she loved Clara more than anything. Naomi's brush paused on the canvas. What do you mean, whatever else she was? Victor looked at her, his expression unreadable. Elena was complicated, beautiful, brilliant, but complicated. She had parts of herself she never shared with me. Whole rooms in her heart I was never allowed to enter. He left before Naomi could respond, but his words stayed with her. They made Elena feel more human, more real than the villain she'd built in her mind. One afternoon, while they were painting together, Clara finally spoke more than a few words. You smell like my mommy, she said quietly, her little voice barely audible. She was mixing colors on her palette, not looking up. Naomi's heart clenched. What did your mommy smell like? Lavender, Clara whispered, and rain. She said it reminded her of someone she used to know, someone from before. Naomi looked down at her hands, at the lavender lotion she'd been using for years. The same one her mother had loved, the same one Elena had given to her mother once, long ago, in what Naomi had always imagined was a cruel gesture. But maybe it hadn't been cruel. Maybe it had been the only piece of herself Elena could share. I think your mommy had good taste, Naomi said gently, brushing a curl from Clara's face, and I think she would be very proud of what a strong girl you are. Clara nodded and went back to painting. But she stayed close to Naomi now. Always close. She started holding her hand when they walked through the mansion, started asking her to tuck her in at night, started calling her Nomi because Naomi was too long. Victor noticed the change. He began coming home earlier. He started joining them for dinner, something Mrs. Chen said he hadn't done since Elena died. At first he was quiet, just watching. But slowly he began to speak, to laugh at Clara's stories, to ask about their day, to remember what it felt like to be part of a family. She's different with you, Victor said one evening after Clara had gone to bed. They were in the kitchen, Naomi making tea while Victor went through some papers. In 3 weeks, you've done what 3 nannies couldn't do in months. She's talking, she's laughing, she's alive again. She just needed someone to see her, Naomi replied, pouring hot water over the tea leaves. Not fix her, just see her. Victor looked up from his papers, really looked at her. Is that what you do? See people? Naomi met his gaze. I try to. What do you see when you look at me? He asked, his voice quiet. The question hung in the air between them. Naomi saw too much. She saw a man drowning in grief, buried under responsibility, desperate for connection, but afraid to reach for it. She saw her mother's destroyer and a father trying to save his daughter. She saw everything and nothing all at once. I see someone who's trying, she finally said. That's more than most people do. Something shifted in Victor's expression, something warmer, something that made Naomi's chest tighten with an emotion she didn't want to name. One evening after Clara had gone to bed, Victor found Naomi sitting by the piano in the living room, her fingers tracing the keys but not playing. The instrument was beautiful, a Steinway grand that probably cost more than her mother's entire apartment. "Do you play?" he asked, stepping into the room with 2 glasses of wine. He offered her one. She startled, turning quickly. She took the glass with shaking hands. "A little. My mother taught me. She wasn't formally trained, but she loved music. She said it was the only thing that made sense when everything else was chaos." "Elena used to play," Victor said, sitting beside her on the bench. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. Every night before bed, it was her way of calming down. She'd play for hours sometimes, losing herself in it. After she died, I couldn't stand the sound of it. I had the piano tuned, but I never touched it. Naomi's throat tightened. "And now?" Victor looked at her, really looked at her in a way that made her feel exposed. "Now, I think I'd like to hear it again, if you're willing." She hesitated, then pressed a few keys. A soft melody filled the room. Simple, haunting, beautiful. It was a piece her mother used to play, one of the few she'd learned well enough to teach Naomi. Victor closed his eyes, his head tilting back slightly. "You sound like her." Naomi's hands trembled on the keys. "Maybe that's why I'm here." He opened his eyes, studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What do you mean by that?" She forced a smile, trying to cover her slip. "Maybe I remind you of the things you miss. Maybe that's why Clara responded to me, why you're comfortable with me. I'm an echo of something you lost." Victor didn't respond immediately. He reached out, his hand covering hers on the keys. His skin was warm, his touch gentle. "Maybe you're not an echo. Maybe you're something entirely new." The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Naomi pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. "I should go. It's late." "Naomi," Victor called as she reached the door. She turned. "Thank you for everything you're doing for Clara. For us." She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and fled to her room. Over the following weeks, the walls between them began to crumble. Victor started talking about his life, about the loneliness of building an empire, about how he'd buried himself in work because it was easier than facing the emptiness his wife's death had left behind, about how he'd failed as a father in those first months, unable to reach his daughter through his own grief. "I was drowning," he admitted one night. They were in his study, Naomi having brought him coffee when she noticed his light still on at midnight, and I was pulling Clara down with me. I didn't know how to be what she needed because I didn't know how to be anything anymore. "You're here now," Naomi said softly, setting the coffee on his desk. "That's what matters. You're trying. You're present. Clara sees that." "Does she?" Victor asked, looking up at her with eyes full of doubt. "Or does she just see you? You've become everything to her, Naomi. I'm grateful, but I'm also terrified. What happens when you leave? Will she break all over again?" The question hit Naomi like a physical blow, because he was right to be afraid. She couldn't stay. Not once he knew the truth. Not once he understood why she'd really come. "I won't leave," she heard herself say. "Not until Clara doesn't need me anymore." It was a promise she had no right to make. But looking at Victor's relieved smile, she couldn't take it back. Naomi listened. She comforted him, and against every plan she'd made, against every promise she'd whispered to her mother's grave, she started to care. She cared when Victor laughed at Clara's jokes. She cared when he came home early to have dinner with them. She cared when he looked at her like she was the answer to questions he'd been too afraid to ask. But every night, when the house fell silent and Victor was asleep in his room and Clara was dreaming peacefully, Naomi would slip into Elena's old study. She'd search through drawers, old journals, photo albums, looking for the letters her mother had written, the letters that had been returned unopened, the letters that had broken her mother's heart and eventually killed her spirit. One night, 3 months into her time at the mansion, she found a box hidden in the back of a closet behind winter coats that smelled of mothballs and lavender. Inside were photographs, letters tied with ribbon, and a journal bound in soft leather. Naomi's hands shook as she opened it. The first entry was dated 23 years ago. "I met someone today. Her name is Isabel. She was at the gallery, standing in front of the same painting I'd been studying for an hour. She turned to me and said, 'It's about loneliness, isn't it? The way the colors separate but never quite touch.' And I knew. I knew she was unlike anyone I've ever known. I think I might be in love. Naomi's vision blurred. Her mother. Elena had written about her mother. She flipped through the pages frantically, her heart breaking with each entry. Isabel wants more than I can give. She wants me to leave Victor, to start a life with her. She doesn't understand. I can't. I love her. God help me, I do. But I love him too. And I don't know how to be the person she needs me to be. We fought again today. She called me selfish, a coward. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am both those things. But I'm also trapped by my choices, by my fear, by everything I've built that I'm not strong enough to tear down. I told her it's over. I had to. She cried. She begged me to reconsider, but I can't do this anymore. The guilt is eating me alive. I'm destroying her and I'm destroying myself. I've never felt more like a monster. Isabel sent another letter. I didn't open it. I can't. If I read her words, I'll break. I'll go to her. And then what? What kind of life could we have built on the ruins of everything else? It's better this way for both of us. I have to believe that. The final entry was short, written in shaking handwriting. I'm pregnant. Victor is overjoyed, and all I can think about is how Isabel always wanted children, how she used to talk about the family we could have. I've taken everything from her, and I hate myself for it. But I can't undo what's done. I can only move forward. I can only try to be better for this child, for Victor, for everyone but myself, because I don't deserve happiness, not after what I've done. Naomi closed the journal, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking with the force of her sobs. Her mother hadn't been destroyed by Elena. Elena had been destroyed by the choice she couldn't make. They destroyed each other, two people loving each other in ways that could never be reconciled with the lives they'd built. What are you doing? Naomi spun around, the journal falling from her hands. Victor stood in the doorway in pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair disheveled from sleep. His face was a mixture of confusion and rising anger. Her voice broke. I can explain. You're going through Elena's things, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. In the middle of the night. Explain that, Naomi. Explain why you're in my dead wife's study, reading her private journals. Please, Naomi whispered, standing on trembling legs. Please, just let me explain. Who are you? Victor demanded, stepping into the room. His eyes were hard now, all the warmth gone. Really? Who are you? Because the woman I've been falling in love with wouldn't betray my trust like this. So tell me, who the hell are you? The words hung in the air. Falling in love with. He'd said it without even realizing. Naomi picked up the journal with shaking hands. My name is Naomi Ross. My mother was Isabel Ross. All the color drained from Victor's face. He took a step back, his hand reaching for the doorframe as if he needed support. Isabel, she loved your wife, Naomi said, her voice shaking so badly she could barely get the words out. She loved her, and Elena broke her. My mother spent the rest of her life grieving someone who threw her away like she was nothing. She died 6 months ago, Victor. Died with Elena's name on her lips and those unopened letters clutched to her chest. I came here to find out why, to understand why Elena destroyed her, to understand what kind of person does that to someone who loved them. Victor stared at her, his face ashen. Isabel, God, I remember her now. Elena talked about her once, years ago. It was late at night and she'd been drinking. She said she'd hurt someone she cared about deeply, someone who wanted more than she could give, someone who deserved better than what she'd offered. She cried that night. I'd never seen her cry like that. She didn't just hurt her, Naomi whispered, tears streaming down her face. She ruined her. My mother never recovered. She never loved anyone else, never let anyone close. She lived alone in a tiny apartment, working 2 jobs, and every night she'd take out those letters and those photos and she'd cry. For 20 years, Victor. 20 years of grieving someone who wouldn't even read her words. Victor's expression softened, pain replacing the anger. And you came here for revenge. I came here for answers, Naomi corrected, her voice breaking. I came here to understand, to find those letters, to read what my mother had written, to know what Elena had found so unworthy that she couldn't even open the envelopes. But then I met Clara and you, and everything I thought I knew started falling apart. Because Elena wasn't a monster, she was just human. She was just someone caught between 2 loves, like 2 lives, and she made the choice she thought she had to make, and it destroyed both of them. Victor took a step closer, his anger melting into something more complex. So what now? You have your answers. You know the truth. Are you going to leave? Naomi looked at him, tears streaming down her face, her heart breaking in ways she didn't know possible. I don't know. I didn't expect to care about you. I didn't expect to love Clara like she was my own. I didn't expect to feel like this place, this cold, dead mansion had become home. I didn't expect any of this, Victor. I came here angry and broken, looking for someone to blame. But you're not to blame. She's not to blame. No one is. It was just love, impossible and destructive and real. And I don't know what to do with that truth. Victor reached out, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. His touch was so tender it made her want to collapse. Neither did I. When I met you, when I saw Clara smile for the first time in months, I thought maybe God or the universe or whatever was out there had sent me a second chance. A chance to be the father I should have been. A chance to feel something other than grief. And then, over these months, watching you with my daughter, talking with you late at night, I started to feel things I thought I'd never feel again. Don't, Naomi whispered. Please don't. Why not? Victor asked, his hand cupping her face now. Because you came here under false pretenses? Because your mother loved my wife? None of that changes what I feel, Naomi. These months with you have been the first time I've felt alive since Elena died. But I lied to you, Naomi said, her voice desperate. Everything was a lie. Was it? Victor challenged. Was the way you cared for Clara a lie? Was the way you made me laugh again a lie? Were all those conversations, all those moments, were they lies? No, Naomi admitted, fresh tears falling. No, those were real. God help me, those were real. For a moment, they just stood there, the weight of secrets and grief and unexpected love hanging between them, heavy and suffocating and somehow beautiful. Then Victor kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of what it meant, like they were both standing on the edge of something they couldn't take back. But then it deepened, becoming something desperate, something that tasted of salt and tears and need. When they pulled apart, both of them were trembling. I love you, Victor whispered against her lips. I don't care how it started. I love you. Naomi sobbed, her fingers clutching his shirt. I love you too, and that's why I can't stay. Victor pulled back, confusion clouding his features. What? Don't you see? Naomi said, her voice breaking. This is exactly what destroyed them. Love that couldn't exist in the light. Love built on secrets and guilt. I can't do that to us. I can't do that to Clara. She deserves better than a nanny who came here to investigate her dead mother. You deserve better than someone who lied from the very beginning. Then we start over, Victor said desperately. Right now. We start fresh with the truth between us. Naomi shook her head, pulling away from him. It's not that simple. Every time you look at me, you'll remember this. Every time Clara calls me Nomi, I'll remember why I really came. We can't build something real on this foundation, Victor. It's already cracked. She walked past him, her heart shattering with every step. Naomi, please, Victor called after her, his voice raw with pain. Please don't do this. But she kept walking, because staying would only hurt them more in the end. The next morning, Naomi packed her bags before dawn. She moved quietly through her room, folding clothes with shaking hands, just trying not to think about Clara sleeping down the hall, trying not to think about Victor's kiss, trying not to think about how this place had become the first home she'd felt since her mother died. But she couldn't leave without saying goodbye. She found Clara in her playroom, already awake, building a tower with blocks. The little girl looked up when Naomi entered, and her face lit up with a smile that made Naomi's heart break all over again. Naomi, look, I'm building the tallest tower ever. Naomi knelt beside her, pulling her into a tight hug. It's beautiful, sweetheart, just like you. Clara pulled back, studying her face. Children always knew. They always saw what adults tried to hide. You're crying. Why are you sad? I have to go away for a while, Naomi said gently, brushing a curl from Clara's face. Clara's expression crumpled. You're leaving? Like Mommy did? No, baby, not like that, Naomi said quickly, her voice thick with tears. Your mommy didn't want to leave. She would have stayed forever if she could have. I'm leaving because sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices. But I need you to know something very important. Are you listening? Clara nodded, tears streaming down her small face. You are brave and strong and so full of light. Naomi said, her voice shaking. Your mommy loved you more than anything in this world. And your daddy, he loves you so much, it scares him sometimes. And me? I love you too. I'll always love you. And even though I'm leaving, I'm not really gone. Do you understand? No, Clara sobbed, clutching her. I don't want you to go. Did I do something wrong? No, Naomi whispered, pulling her close again. You did everything right. You reminded me that love is stronger than pain. You reminded me how to smile. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. Then stay, Clara begged. Please, Naomi. Please stay. I can't, sweetheart, but I'll always be with you. Every time you laugh, every time you paint, every time you play the piano, I'll be right there. I promise. Victor stood in the doorway, watching them. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face haggard. He'd clearly been up all night. Clara ran to him, burying her face in his legs. Daddy, make her stay. Please, make her stay. Victor picked her up, holding her tight while looking at Naomi over her head. Some stories aren't meant to continue, he said quietly, repeating her words from the night before. They're just meant to heal what's left behind. Naomi nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She kissed Clara's forehead one last time, breathing in her little girl's smell of strawberry shampoo and paint. Be good for your daddy, and remember, you're braver than you think. Then she walked past Victor, their eyes meeting for one last moment. So much was said in that look. I'm sorry. I love you. I wish things were different. Goodbye. She didn't look back. If she looked back, she'd never leave. 6 months passed. The mansion was different now, warmer. Victor had kept his promise to Clara and to himself. He was present. He played with her after work. They cooked dinner together, messy and imperfect. They talked about Elena, keeping her memory alive in healthy ways. Clara was in therapy, learning to process her grief. And slowly, carefully, they were both healing. Victor hired another nanny, an older woman named Grace, who was patient and kind, but made no attempts to replace what they'd lost. She was exactly what Clara needed: stable, predictable, safe. But there were still moments when Clara would ask about Naomi. Do you think she's happy, Daddy? And Victor would smile, though it always hurt. I think she's healing, just like we are. One Saturday afternoon in early spring, Victor took Clara to a ribbon-cutting ceremony, a new music school he'd funded in the heart of the city, in the neighborhood where Naomi had grown up, where Isabel had lived and died alone. The sign above the door read, "The Ross Foundation for Children, where every voice deserves to be heard." Clara gasped. That's Naomi's last name. It is, Victor said, his hand on her shoulder. This school is for kids who love music but can't afford lessons. Kids like your mom was, like Naomi's mom was, so that everyone gets a chance to find their voice. Inside, the walls were painted in warm colors. There were practice rooms and a small concert hall, and in the main lobby, a framed photograph. Naomi teaching Clara to play piano, both of them smiling. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "In memory of Isabel Ross, who taught her daughter that love can sound like music even when words fail." Clara ran up to it, touching the glass gently. That's us. That's me and Naomi. Yes, it is, Victor said softly. A small group of children were already in one of the practice rooms, and Victor could hear the sound of a piano. The melody was familiar, the same piece Naomi had played that night in his living room. Do you think she knows about this? Clara asked. I hope so, Victor replied. I sent her an invitation. Will she come? Victor looked down at his daughter, seeing Elena in her eyes, seeing Naomi in her smile. I don't know, sweetheart, but that's okay. Sometimes people can't come back, but that doesn't mean they've forgotten us. They walked through the school, Victor pointing out the different rooms, explaining how the program would work. As they were leaving, he looked back at the photograph one last time. You were never who I thought you were, he whispered. You were more. You were exactly what we needed, even if we couldn't keep you. Outside, the spring sun was warm on their faces. Clara held his hand, swinging it gently as they walked to the car. Daddy, she said, I think Naomi would be proud of you. Victor smiled, the first real smile he'd felt in months. I think so too. As they drove away, he didn't see the woman standing across the street, watching them leave. Naomi stood there with tears streaming down her face, one hand pressed to her heart. She'd gotten his invitation. She'd come to the ceremony but had stayed hidden in the crowd, unable to face them, unable to trust herself, not to run to Clara, to Victor, to the life she'd walked away from. But seeing the school, seeing her mother's name honored, seeing Clara happy and healthy and whole, it was enough. It had to be enough. She whispered to the wind, hoping somehow it would carry her words to them. Thank you for healing, for living, for being more than your pain. Then she turned and walked away, her mother's journal clutched to her chest, finally ready to let the past rest. And that's how love can break, heal, and rebuild even the coldest heart. Even when the truth is painful, even when the ending isn't what you expected, love has the power to change everything. It can turn strangers into family, pain into purpose, and goodbye into a new beginning. If this story touched you the way it touched me, please hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you thought about Victor and Naomi's impossible love, and subscribe for more stories that will make you feel something real. Because in the end, isn't that what we're all searching for? Something real, something that reminds us we're human, something that proves love exists even in the darkest places. Thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling with me. Until next time, remember, sometimes the people who hurt us the most are just other broken souls trying to survive their own stories. And sometimes the only way to heal is to forgive them, forgive ourselves, and choose to love.